model is object-based model for modeling system requirements. It decimates a complex software requirement into simple, well-defined pieces called objects. You will be having a complex function or complex application or complex software. Then you can divide them with respect to the each and every object, and then you can divide them as a pieces, and then each and every objects will be working with related to one application. Okay, object oriented model brings reusability, maintainability, and productivity in a system design. See, if I am connecting the keyboard means always related to keyboard, if you have any software that should be separately mentioned, or if you are using the stepper motor, that should be separately objectified, and you have to divide it and write it as a stepper motor software. Okay, and it can be continuously used whenever it is required. You can call that object function and you can run it. Okay, in that way you will be dividing the object oriented programs. Object oriented model brings reusability, maintainability, and productivities, because see, whenever any mistakes occur or any problem occur related to that object, or as I told you an example of stepper motor, if any problem occurs related to stepper motor, if you are changing the program of the stepper motor is enough to overcome from that problem. Okay, in the object oriented modeling, object is an entity used for representing or modeling a particular piece of system. Each object is characterized by a set of unique behavior and state. And a class is an abstract description of a set of objects, and it can be considered as a blueprint of a object. If I am taking an example of a class as an abstract description, set of objects will be present in one class, and you can it can be considered as a blueprint of an object. Okay, a class represents the state of object through members, variables, and object behavior through the member function. The member variable and member function of a class can be private, public, or protected. If I am going related to private member variables and functions are accessible only within the class. Member variables and functions are accessible only within the class. Uh, as the cluster or main program is there, within that, if I am taking the private member variable, then that will be useful only within that main program. Okay, whereas public variables and functions are accessible within the class as well as outside the class also. Outside the program also you can access those type of variables, that will become a public variable. The protected variables and functions are protected from the external access. Externally, any other user or any other program can't access these type of variables, that will become protected variables. However, classes derived from the parent class can also access the protected member function and variables. If you have a parent class, within that you have a subclass, the private member which is present in the subclass can be accessed by the parent class, because that private class subclass is a member of that parent class only. And the concept of object and class brings abstraction, hiding, and protection. Next we will go with embedded firmware design and development, how we can design it, how we can develop it. uh, Introduction to embedded firmware design. The embedded firmware is responsible for controlling and various peripherals of the embedded hardware and generating a response in accordance with the functional requirements. What all the functional requirements are there with respect to that, how we are going to write the program and how we are going to execute it. Firmware is considered as a master brain of an embedded system, and imparting intelligence to the embedded system is one time process, and it can happen at any stage. You will be having many process for the implementation of embedded system. In any stage you can implement your firmware. Firmware is the main master brain of the embedded system, which will help us to work or which will help us to do the application run. Okay, and It can be immediately after the fabrication of the embedded hardware or at the later stage. At the time of fabrication only you can implement your firmware, or at the time of after the completion of hardware implementation also you can implement the firmware. For most of the embedded products, the embedded firmware is stored as a permanent memory. Means you will be store whatever the firmware or program you will be writing, that will be stored inside the ROM. That is an permanent memory. Once it is installed, you can't alter it. Okay, they are non-alterable by the end user. Some of the embedded products used in the control and instrumentation domain are adaptive. And designing embedded firmware requires understanding of a particular embedded product hardware, like various component interfacing, memory map details, IO port details, configuration and register details of various hardware chips used and some programming languages. All those important information should be known to the person who is implementing this firmware. Okay. Embedded firmware development process starts with the conversion of the firmware requirements into a program model using modeling tool. If I am writing the firmware or software, if I am generating, always you should generate using the modeling tool. If I am writing the program for my ARM controller, in lab we have done already. I am writing the program in microcontroller, that is assembly level language. And if I am writing the program in a embedded C, that is in the form of C programming. Any type of programming we can use with respect to the modeling tool, we can write it and we can implement into the hardware. Then it will be generated as a firmware. And once the program model is created, the next step is to implement implementation of tasks and actions by capturing the model using a language which is understandable by the targeting processor or controller. Once if you have selected the programming model, like I am selecting the programming model as a microcontroller programming model, and the software used to write the program is Keel Microvision I am taking. I am writing the program for Keel under the programming model Keel Microvision. I am writing for any application. Whenever I am writing the program for the application, you should implement the tasks and actions to which can be processable or which can be targeted into the processor or controller. And the firmware design approaches for embedded product is purely dependent on the complexity of the functions to be performed and the speed of the operation required. Two basic approaches are used for embedded firmware design is superloop based approach and embedded operating system approach. In superloop based approach, it is a conventional procedural based design. Here no need of operating system. You will be writing the programs in the superloop based approach. The superloop based firmware development approach is adopted for applications that are not time critical and where the response time is not so important. Wherever the response time is not important, you are going for the superloop mod based approach. It is very similar to a conventional procedural programming where the code is executed task by task. As I told you, one task will be executing first. After the completion of the task, one more task will be executed. In that way, you will be arranging the tasks, means what all the application has to be executed one by one, they have to be arranged, and then you will be executing them in the super loop based approach. In this it is similar, it is very similar to the conventional procedural program where the code is executed task by task. The task listed at the top of the program code is executed first, and the task just below the top are executed after completing the first task. In a multiple task based system, each task is executed in serial in this approach, always in serial way only. How it is arranged top to the bottom continuously it will be running. As and when it reaches the last task, after completion of the last task, it will go back to the first task. Okay. The firmware execution flow for this will be configure the common parameters and perform initialization for various hardware components, memory, registers, etc. Start the first task and execute it, execute the second task, execute the next task, and in that way continuously you have to execute the level by level tasks. Okay, execute the last defined task. After that, jump back to the first task and follow the same flow. Next, in the order in which the task is to be executed are fixed and then are hard coded in the code itself. Also, the operation is an infinite loop based approach. We can visualize the operational sequential listed above in terms of the C programming code. Here you can see main program is there and configurations, initializations we have done, and in the while loop task 1 is there, task 2, in this way continuously till task n is there. While loop means infinite loop, it is continuously you will be executing the program within the till it is sorry, it is a infinite function. Okay, after completion 1, 2 will be executing till the n task. After completion of task n, it will go back to task 1 and till, in this way continuously it will be rotating in this while loop only. Okay, almost all tasks in the embedded applications are non-ending and are repeated infinitely throughout the operation. This repetition is achieved by using an infinite loop. Okay, hence the name is called as super loop based approach. And the only way to come out of the loop is either a hardware reset or interrupt assertion. A hardware reset brings the program execution back to the main loop, and an interrupt request suspends the task execution temporarily and performs the corresponding interrupt routine. And on completion of the interrupt routine, it restarts the task execution from the point where it has been interrupted. Whenever we are going for super loop based approach and all, if you want to stop the function execution, then you have to give the external hardware interrupt or else external hardware reset. If you are resetting the whole program, then it will come back to the main loop. Okay, if you are stopping the program execution in between by giving the interrupt, external interrupt, if the after completion of that interrupt, you have to start where the previously where the interrupt has stopped the program. That is related to how we can exit from that loop. Advantages of super loop based approach is it doesn't require an operating system. There is no need of scheduling and which task is to be executed and assigning priority to each task. The priorities are fixed and the order in which the task to be executed are also fixed. Hence, the code for performing these tasks will be residing in the code memory without an operating system image. No need of operating system here, and whatever the code we are writing for the super loop, or everything will be present in the code memory only. Next is applications of super loop based approach. What all the applications are there, where we can implement them, all those things we can see here. This type of design is deployed in low cost embedded products and products where response time is not so much critical. In low cost embedded system, if I am taking an operating system, that will only cost higher. That's why if you are going for the low cost embedded system and less memory usage systems, then you can go for this a super loop based approach, where the response time is not a critical function. Means normally if you will be having the electronic toys and all, there you don't have any criticality related to the time. Whenever it is giving the response, that is only your output. That's why for those type of applications you can go for the super loop based approach. Some embedded products demands this type of approach is if some task itself are sequential. Some embedded products demand this type of approach if some tasks itself are sequential. And for example, reading and writing the data and from a card, Using a card reader requires a sequence of operations like checking the presence of card, authenticating the operation, reading and writing, etc. It should strictly follow the specified sequence, and the combination of these series of the task constitutes a single task, namely data read or write. A typical example for the Superloop based product is an electronic video game toy containing the keypad and display unit. If I am taking an example of any video game toy where it is having the keypad and where it is having the display unit, the program running inside the product may be designed in such a way that it reads the key to detect whether the user has given any input. If any key press is detected, the graphic display is updated. The keyboard scanning and display updating happens at the reasonably high rate. Even if the application misses the key press, it won't create any critical issue. Rather, it will be treated as a bug in the firmware. It is not economical to embed an operating system into a low-cost product, and it is an utter waste to do so if the response requirements are not critical. Drawbacks of Superloop based approaches: if failure in any part of the single task will affect the total system. If the program hangs up at some point while executing the task, it will remain there forever. And ultimately the product stop functionality. Watchdog timer can be used to overcome from this, but this in turn may cause the additional hardware cost and firmware overhead. See, whenever I am going with related to Superloop based approach, if I am running the main program or executing the main program, at that time, in between you got any error, or in between you got any uh, problem, it if it gets hang in between, then it will be a ultimate problem for the overall function, because as and when it is stopping, there only it will stop till the end only, forever it will be in the same stage only. To stop that, you can go for the watchdog timer, which will check for the what is the error, and after that it will come out of that, it will restart the whole system and you can start the program from starting part. But to implement that watchdog timer, it will be having the additional hardware implementation, and also it will be having the cost addition. Lack of uh, timeliness: if the number of tasks to be executed within an application increases, the time at which each task is repeated also increases. This brings the probability of missing out some events. For example, in the system with the keypads, in order to identify the key pressed, you may have to press the keys or for a sufficiently long time until the keypad status monitoring task is executed internally by the firmware. Interrupts can be used for external events requiring the real-time attention. Lack of real timeness means sometimes whatever the products we are using, it may as we have told already, it is not time critical. If we are taking an example of keyboard with a game keyboard, it will be asking for us to press the key at least for a 3 seconds or 4 seconds. After that only it will display that key onto the display. Okay, it is not time critical one. That's why if you want any interrupt to be any function to be executed in a real time, then you have to implement an external interrupts. Okay, if I am going for embedded operating system based approach, that is operating system based approach, the embedded operating system based approach contains the operating system, which can be either a general purpose operating system or real time operating system to host the user written application firmware. It may be of any general purpose or else real-time operating system. Any one you can use. With us related to what type of application we are going to implement this operating system, we can select any one of these. Okay. The general purpose operating system based design is very similar to the conventional PC based application development, where the device contains an operating system and Windows, Unix, Linux, etc. for desktop PCs, and you will be creating and running user applications on top of it. You will be creating and running user application on top of it. Example of GPOS used in embedded product development is Microsoft Windows XP embedded. Example of embedded product using Microsoft Windows XP operating system are personal digital assistants, handheld devices, portable devices, and point of sale terminals. Use of GPIO is in embedded products merges the demarcation of embedded system and general computing system in terms of operating. See, if I am taking the operating system as a general purpose operating system, it may become a general purpose product rather than the embedded system. If I am dividing the embedded system from the general purpose system, then it should have a different type of operating system. For that reason, it may merge. If I am using the general purpose operating system, it may merge our embedded system into a general purpose system. You may have a difficulty to identify that the product is general purpose or an embedded system. Okay, that is the main problem we will face here. Use of GPIO in embedded products merges the demarcation of embedded system and general purpose computing system. For developing applications on top of operating system, the OS supported application APIs, application program interfaces are used. And similar to the different hardware specific drivers, OS based applications also require the driver software for different hardware present on the board to communicate with them. Real-time operating system based design approach is employed in embedded product demanding real-time response. If I am going for real-time operating systems, whenever the embedded system requires the real-time responses, at that time you have to use the real-time operating system. RTOS responds in a timely and predictable manner to events, and real-time operating system contains the real-time kernel responsible for performing the preemptive multitasking, scheduler for scheduling tasks, and multiple threads, etc. Always whenever we are going with related to real-time operating system, always we need to have a primitive multitasking, schedulers, and multiple threads, etc. A real-time operating system allows flexible scheduling of the system resources like CPU and memory, and offers some way to communicate between the tasks. Okay, and Windows CE, PSOS, SOS, VXWorks, ThreadX, Micro C, OS2, and embedded Linux, Symbian, etc. are the example for the RTOS embedded in embedded product development. Mobile phones, PDS based on Windows CE, Windows mobile platforms, handheld devices, etc. are example of embedded products based on RTOS. Most of the mobile phones are built around the popular RTOS Symbian. For embedded firmware development, we can use either a target processor, controller specific language, generally known as assembly language, or low level language. A target processor control independent language like C, C++, Java, etc., commonly known as high level languages. And a combination of assembly and high level language also you can use to generate your program. Assembly language based development. Assembly language is a human readable notation of machine language. Machine language is a processor understandable language. As we already discussed with us related to this, machine language will be in the form of zeros and ones. Assembly language in the form of alphabetical order. Human can read those type of languages. That is assembly level language. Machine language, the chips which can be read Okay, the language which can be read by the chips or hardware, that is called as hardware language, or sorry, machine language. Machine language is made readable by using specific symbol called mnemonics, and hence machine language can be considered as an interface between the processor and programmer. And assembly language and machine language are processor or controller dependent, and an assembly program written for one processor or controller family will not work on the other. See, if I am writing a program for a microcontroller, it can't be executed in the microprocessor or it can't be executed in the DSP. In that way, the assembly language will be always specific with respect to the family and with respect to the what hardware we are using. Assembly language programming is the task of writing a program specific machine code in mnemonic form, converting the mnemonics into actual processor instructions and associated data using an assembler. Okay, whatever the program you will write, you will be writing in the form of higher level language, that is assembly language. As we have seen in the examples of your embedded system programs only, add c or adc you will be writing, that is an opcode. Okay, that adc is adding with the carry. Okay, that you have to convert it in the form of mnemonics, which will be in the form of zeros and ones. To convert this language, your opcode, into the mnemonics, you can use the assembler here. Okay, and assembly language program was the most common type of programming adopted in the beginning of the software revolution. In the starting of the assembly language programming, we have used the software revolution. Even today, also almost all the low level system related programming is carried out using the assembly language. In particular, assembly language often used in writing the low level interaction between the operating system and the hardware of instance in device drivers. Here, the general format of assembly language instruction in the opcode following are operands. The opcode tells the processor or controller what to do. As we have seen, opcode is the function. What the processor has to do will be informed in the form of opcode. Provide the data and information required to perform the action specified as the by the opcode. Here you can see the example: move a comma hash 30, where move is an opcode and 30 is an operand. And here the same instruction when written in the machine language will look like this. See, this move a, you can write it in the form of 01110100. If I am writing this 30, 30 you can write it in the form of, this is an decimal value. If you are converting this into the hexadecimal value, it will be in this form. Okay, where the first 8-bit binary value, this 11101000 represents the opcode, that is move a, and the next second 8-bit binary value represents the 30. Okay, this is the actual representation of your, this is for your assembly language, this is for machine level language. Here, each line of the assembly language program is split into 4 fields as given below. First is label, second is opcode, operand, and comments. Whenever you are writing any program, you can divide them in this format. One is opcode, one is operand, and one is comments. A label is an optional identifier used extensively in the program to reduce the reliance of programmers for remembering where data of or code is located. Sometimes, see, whenever you are writing the program in the bigger industrial programs or bigger controlling operations or bigger programming control operations, at that time you will not be able to find the parts of the program where you want to control the each and every parts of your hardware system. At that time, these labels are important. Okay, and here you can see that this part represents the label. After representing the label, you have to put the colon, and then you will be having the opcode. After the comma, you will be having operand, and if you are using the semicolon and writing anything, that will become a comment. Okay. The assembly language program written in assembly code is saved as .asm and assembly file or and .src source file, also .s file. You can represent them in the form of .source file or .s file or .asm file. Okay, any text editor like Notepad or WordPad from the Microsoft or text editor provided by the integrated development tool can be used to write the assembly language instructions. Similar to C and other high level language programming, we can have a multiple source files called modules in assembly language programming. Um, you can see that each module is represented as an .asm or .src file, and this approach is known as modular programming. Similar to C, in the high level languages also you can have a multiple source files called modules in assembly language programming. You can have more than 3 to 4 programs and you can combine them as an one assembly language programming also. Modular programming is employed when the program is too complex and too long. In modular programming, the entire code is divided into submodules and each module is made as reusable. Modular programs are usually easy to code and debug and alter. Um, Whenever we are having this bigger and complex programs, you can divide the main program in the form of functions, smaller functions, and then you can combine them and reuse them continuously whenever you are executing the main program. Okay. You can see here assembly language to machine language conversion process, source file 1 and source file 2, and you will be having object to hex file converter. You will be having the object to hex file converter. Library files will be supporting related to your object file, and modular first source file will be taken. Modular assembler will be using to convert your actual high level language into the hexadecimal value or your zeros and ones format. Object file 1 will be created. For source file 2, same modular assembler, you will be converting it into object file 2. And object to hexa file converter, that is machine code. And whatever the object files are there, the linker and locator will take those object files and absolute object file will be taken, and then object to hex file conversion will be done here and mission code will be generated. Library files will be helping us to find out what type of opcode and operands are there and how it is represented in the form of hexadecimal value. That help will we can take it from the library file. Source file to object file translation. Translation of assembly code to machine code is performed by the assembler. You please keep it in the mind that assembler will be working to convert your main program into machine assembly level language program into machine level language. Okay, the assemblers for different target machines are different. A51 microassembler for Keel software is a popular assembler for 8051 family microcontrollers. The various steps involved in conversion of a program written in assembly language to corresponding binary file or machine language are illustrated here in the previous figure only. Okay. And each source module is written in assembly and is stored in the form of .src file, as that is source file or .sm file. Each file can be assembled separately to examine the syntax error and incorrect assembly instructions. At this time, whenever you are separating the programs and whenever you are converting them into the machine code, you can find out the syntax errors also and you can see incorrect assembly instructions also. On successful assembling of each .src and .asm file, a corresponding object file is created, that is .obj. Okay, the object file does not contain the absolute address of where the generated code needs to be placed on the program memory, and hence it is called as relocatable segment. and it can be placed at any code memory location, and it is responsibility and it is the responsibility of the linker or locator to assign the absolute address of this module. Linker and locator will be finding out the proper address where the object file should be located. Okay, and each module can share variables and subroutines among them, and keyword public and extern are used while accessing the shared variables and subroutines.